Book nibbles. Big ideas, small bites. Anne Frank's diary begins not with grand drama but with the voice of a spirited young girl who finds joy in confiding her private thoughts to an imagined friend named Kitty. From the very start, what strikes us is how alive she feels on the page. She is clever, sometimes mischievous, prone to laughter, and yet also deeply self-aware. She explains that although she has friends, she doesn't feel she can be truly open with anyone, so she turns to her diary as a trusted companion. In that choice, we begin to witness the making of a voice that would later echo across generations. She is 13 when she begins, and the world around her is changing rapidly, filled with news of Hitler's rise and the hardships imposed on Jews in Amsterdam. But to Anne, at least in the beginning, life is still colored by the ordinary concerns of adolescence. School, teachers, quarrels with friends, crushes, and the endless attempt to make sense of her parents. She lives with her father Otto, her mother Edith, and her older sister Margot. Otto is calm, steady, gentle, a man Anne adores and often holds up as an example of the patience she wishes she had. Her mother she often criticizes, sometimes harshly, because Anne feels misunderstood and treated unfairly. Margot is quiet, diligent, and so well-behaved that Anne often feels like the difficult child in comparison. These family dynamics become more vivid later in confinement, but even in the opening pages, we see how much Anne longs to be truly seen for who she is. The world outside begins to close in. Anti-Jewish decrees intensify. Jews are forbidden from riding bicycles, from taking public transport, from attending theaters, from shopping freely, from going out after certain hours. Schools are segregated, and Anne and Margot must attend Jewish-only classes. The Franks, like so many others, adjust with resilience, but life becomes narrower, smaller, and filled with unspoken fear. Then, in July 1942, when Margot receives a call-up notice to report for work in a German labor camp, the family realizes they cannot wait any longer. Otto has quietly prepared for this possibility, and now they must vanish into hiding sooner than expected. And describes the day they leave with heartbreaking clarity. She wears multiple layers of clothes since carrying suitcases would look suspicious. The family walks through the streets of Amsterdam, pretending as though it's any other day, yet Anne senses the weight of this new chapter. They arrive at a set of offices where Otto once worked. Behind these offices, hidden from casual view, lies what will become known as the secret annex. From the outside, it looks like an ordinary warehouse and business. But behind a movable bookcase, there is a narrow door leading into a concealed apartment of rooms. This, Anne learns, will be their world for the foreseeable future. At first, the annex is just the Franks, but soon they are joined by another family, the Van Dons, Herman, his wife Auguste, and their teenage son Peter. Later still, another man, Mr. Dussel, a dentist, moves in as well. Suddenly, the cramped space is filled with 8 people, each with distinct personalities, habits, and irritations. Anne's diary vividly records the small frictions that emerge in such confined quarters. Food is rationed, supplies are smuggled in by trusted helpers like Miep Geese and others who risk their lives to support the hidden families. The helpers bring bread, vegetables when they can find them, and news of the outside world. They become lifelines not just in material ways but in keeping spirits connected to something beyond the walls. Life in hiding is a strange combination of monotony and terror. Days stretch endlessly with little variety, but at the same time, every creak of the floor or unexpected knock on the door could mean discovery and death. They must remain absolutely silent during office hours below, careful not to drop anything or walk too heavily because workers might hear them. Even using the bathroom requires careful planning. Yet in the evenings when the warehouse empties, they whisper, argue, laugh, read, and sometimes listen to the radio. Anne's diary captures this daily rhythm. The endless peeling of potatoes, the hunger that gnaws, the scarcity of luxuries, the way every scrap of food is precious. Anne herself transforms during these months. At first, she is a restless teenager who often quarrels with her mother and with Mrs. Van Don, who she finds fussy, self-centered, and critical. Anne's sharp tongue often lands her in trouble. She notes how Peter, the Van Don's son, seems shy, clumsy, and at first uninteresting to her. Yet as time goes on, as loneliness deepens and her own understanding matures, Anne begins to see Peter differently. He is gentle, kind, and like her, yearning for connection. Their friendship blossoms into a tentative romance, with stolen moments of holding hands, shy kisses, and long conversations in the attic. For Anne, this relationship becomes a source of comfort and validation, a way of feeling less alone in the confined, suffocating atmosphere. Yet even as she discovers new emotional depths and continues to struggle with her family, she feels constantly criticized by her mother, who she sees as cold and unloving. She confides to her diary that she loves her father dearly but cannot seem to earn his full understanding either. She is frustrated that Margot seems perfect, always obedient, and feels that everyone favors her sister. These tensions are not unusual for a teenager, but in the cramped annex they are magnified, written out with all the intensity of adolescence amplified by war. At the same time, Anne's entries reveal remarkable growth. She reads voraciously, studies history, literature, and languages. She reflects on religion, morality, and what it means to be good in a world filled with evil. She describes the bombings heard from a distance, the fear of raids, the stories of Jews being deported, the whispered news of concentration camps. Slowly she begins to understand that those deported are not simply going to work camps, but to their deaths. The enormity of this realization settles heavily on her, and yet she clings to hope. She dreams of becoming a writer, of someday publishing her diary, of using her voice to speak for those who cannot. There are vivid, almost mundane details that remind us these are ordinary people enduring extraordinary circumstances. And complains about the meals, endless beans, watery soup, the longing for butter or fresh milk. She describes quarrels over who uses the shared bathroom, arguments about noise, even disputes over the radio. She writes with humor about Mrs. Van Don's flirtations, about Mr. Dussel's selfishness, about her own frustrations with being treated like a child. But woven into these everyday observations is the constant backdrop of danger. Rumors of arrests sweep through the city. Families they once knew vanish overnight. The fear of betrayal is constant. And begins to wrestle with deeper questions. How people can be so cruel, whether humanity is doomed to repeat violence, what role God plays in suffering. She confesses her longing for freedom, for fresh air, for the simple act of walking outside without fear. Sometimes she climbs to the attic and gazes at the chestnut tree outside the window, the one piece of nature she can still see. That tree becomes a symbol of hope, of life continuing even in the darkest times. As the months turn into years and matures into a thoughtful young woman, her writing becomes more introspective, more attuned to the complexity of human behavior. She admits her own faults, her quick temper, her tendency to exaggerate, but also acknowledges her determination to become a better person. She longs to write something meaningful, to leave behind more than just the record of a frightened girl. She wants to contribute to the world, to speak for justice and truth. Her ambitions grow even as the walls close in tighter. By 1944, there are signs that the war may be turning. News of the Allied invasion in Normandy brings hope that liberation might be near. And the others cling desperately to these glimmers of good news, but still they remain in hiding, hungry, anxious, and exhausted. The tension in the annex grows sharper, with tempers flaring more often. And then abruptly the diary ends. On August 4, 1944, the secret annex is betrayed. Nazi police storm the hiding place, arresting everyone. The pages stop mid-thought, as if the voice that had carried us so far is suddenly silenced. We know the aftermath. And Margot and their mother Edith are eventually transported to concentration camps. Edith dies in Auschwitz. Margot and Anne are sent to Bergen-Belsen, where both contract typhus and die within weeks of each other in early 1945, just before the camp is liberated. Otto Frank, the father and loved so dearly, is the sole survivor. After the war, he returns to Amsterdam, receives Anne's preserved diary from Miep Gies, and works tirelessly to have it published. What lingers from Anne's writing is not just the historical record but the astonishing depth of her insight. She is a teenager, yes, full of the usual contradictions of adolescence, yet she also possesses a rare gift of self-examination and clarity. She captures with piercing honesty the smallness of life in confinement, the bickering, the jokes, the crushes, but also the enormity of war and the moral questions it raises. She writes of her longing for beauty, for freedom, for kindness. Even when surrounded by evidence of cruelty, she insists on believing in the possibility of goodness. One of her most famous reflections is her declaration that, in spite of everything, she still believes people are truly good at heart. That line resonates because it comes not from safety or comfort but from the depths of hiding, from a girl who had every reason to despair. Reading her diary, we are reminded of the power of voice, and could not have known her words would outlive her, that her private confidences to Kitty would someday be read by millions. And yet, in telling her story so faithfully, in capturing the essence of being human under pressure, she has given the world an enduring gift. The diary becomes more than just a chronicle of wartime. It is a portrait of growth, resilience, longing, and the irrepressible desire to be free. For the reader, there are lessons tucked in every page. We learn the value of recording one's thoughts, of using writing as a way to survive emotionally. We see how humor and wit can sustain spirits in dark times. We see how important small kindnesses are, the helpers who risk their lives to bring food, the way in cherished a glimpse of sky, the comfort of friendship. And we are reminded of the fragility of life, the way ordinary families can be swept away by hatred and violence. Anne Frank's Diary of a Young Girl is not just a document of history. It is a mirror held up to humanity. It asks us what we would do under such circumstances, how we would behave, and whether we too could hold on to hope. Her voice, young but wise beyond her years, calls across time, urging us not to forget, urging us to choose compassion, tolerance, and courage. It is this combination of youthful immediacy and timeless reflection that makes her diary one of the most powerful works of the 20th century. And that's it. Anne Frank's Diary of a Young Girl. Thanks for listening to Book Nibbles. If you enjoyed this bite-sized book, don't forget to subscribe for more quick, insightful summaries. See you in the next nibble.